The transport shuttle docked with Kiva 7 station with a soft metallic clang. Ambassador Thurin stepped out, his scaled feet clicking against the cold floor. He had traveled across 3 star systems to reach this place. The Valkyrie Council had given him one task: watch the humans and report what he saw. Thurin was a historian, not a soldier. His species had fought in 2 major wars over the past 1,000 years. Both times they had calculated costs and benefits. Both times they had negotiated peace when the numbers no longer made sense. War was business. Territory was profit. Death was expense. This was how civilized species operated. The humans were different, they said. The humans had lost 3 colony worlds to the Dominion Coalition last month. The attacks had been surgical and precise. Military targets destroyed. But the colonies were new and small. The humans had built homes there, raised children there. When the Dominion bombardment came, there was nowhere to hide. 2.3 million civilians died in a single day. The galaxy expected negotiations. The humans were young, barely 300 years into space travel. They controlled only 14 star systems. The Dominion Coalition controlled over 200. The mathematics were simple. The humans should surrender or accept terms, but the humans had done neither. Theron walked through the station corridors. Other species moved aside when they saw his official robes. He was neutral, protected by treaty. He could go anywhere, see anything, and report it all. The Valkyrie Council wanted to understand what would happen next. The human section of the station was easy to find. Theron heard them before he saw them. They were singing something. Not a happy song. The melody was slow and heavy, filled with pain. The words were in their Earth language, but Theron's translator caught fragments. Something about brothers and fallen stars and promises kept. 2 human soldiers stood outside the docking bay entrance. They wore dark blue uniforms with strange symbols on their shoulders. Both carried weapons, though regulations forbade live arms on the station. Theron noticed this but said nothing. "Ambassador Theron?" one of them asked. He was tall even for a human, with dark hair cut very short. "I'm Captain Doyun. This is Lieutenant Hana. We've been assigned as your liaisons." Theron bowed slightly, as was his custom. "Thank you for receiving me. I am here to observe and document the coming conflict." Hana smiled. Theron found human facial expressions difficult to read, but this one seemed wrong somehow. Too sharp, too cold. "Conflict," she repeated. "Is that what you're calling it? Is there another term you prefer?" Theron asked. "War," Doyen said quietly. "We call it war." Theron followed them into the human section. The docking bay was massive, filled with ships of various sizes. Soldiers moved everywhere, loading equipment and checking systems. The noise was overwhelming. Shouting machinery, the whine of engines warming up. "Your fleet," Theron observed, consulting his datapad. "Intelligence reports suggest you're outnumbered 4 to 1. The Dominion Coalition has superior weapons technology and defensive positions. Military analysts across the galaxy predict—" "Let me guess," Hana interrupted. "They predict we'll lose." "They predict you'll negotiate," Theron corrected. "Surely your leadership understands the mathematics of this situation." Doyen stopped walking. He turned to face Theron, and for the first time the ambassador saw something in the human's eyes that made his scales itch. It was not fear. It was not anger exactly. It was something older, something his species had perhaps forgotten. "Ambassador," Doyun said, his voice very calm. "Let me tell you about mathematics. 3 colonies, 2.3 million people. I did the calculation myself. That's 766 people per hour, 12 people per minute. 1 person every 5 seconds. For an entire day." He paused, then continued. "My sister was on New Busan. She taught children at a school there. When the bombardment started, she was reading them a story. We found the transmission. She died trying to get them to the shelters. The children died too. All 42 of them." Theron said nothing. There was nothing to say. "So yes," Doyen continued, "we understand mathematics. The Dominion thought they could kill our civilians, and we would calculate that fighting back cost too much. They were wrong." Hana gestured for them to keep moving. They walked through rows of ships. Theron noted that many bore damage marks, hastily repaired. These were not new vessels. They were old, used, maintained through necessity rather than abundance. "You cannot win," Theron said, not unkindly. "I have studied thousands of conflicts. When the military disparity is this large, we don't need to win," Hana said. "We need to make them pay." They entered a command center. Holographic displays showed star maps and fleet positions. Thurin recognized the Dominion defense networks. They were formidable, multiple layers of protection around key systems. Any attacking force would be destroyed long before reaching important targets. A woman in an admiral's uniform stood at the center console. She was older, her hair gray, her face lined with years of service. "Ambassador Thurin," she said without turning. "I'm Admiral Heejin. Welcome to the fleet." "Thank you, Admiral. I hope my presence will not interfere with your operations." "You're here to watch," Heejin said. "So watch. But don't expect what you see to make sense by your standards." She touched a control and the star map changed. Red lines appeared showing projected fleet movements. Thurin studied them, his confusion growing. "This trajectory," he said slowly. "You're not positioning for defensive operations. You're not targeting military installations or supply lines. You're heading directly toward their homeworld," Heejin finished. Yes, Thurin felt his blood chill. In all his years studying warfare, he had never seen such a strategy. You did not attack an enemy's homeworld. You took territory, destroyed their military capacity, forced them to negotiate. Attacking a homeworld meant total war. It meant no room for peace, no possibility of coexistence. "That is madness," Thurin said. "You'll unite the entire coalition against you. Every species in the Dominion will fight to the last soldier to defend their core worlds." "Good," Hana said behind him. "Let them." Doyen placed a hand on Thurin's shoulder. The gesture was probably meant to be reassuring, but the ambassador found it unsettling. "You need to understand something about humans," the captain said. "Most species in the galaxy fight wars over resources, territory, political advantage. They fight because the benefits outweigh the costs." He paused, his eyes distant. "We fight for other reasons. We fight because you made it personal. We fight because you killed our children. We fight because if we don't, you'll think you can do it again." A message appeared on the main display. Thurin read it quickly. It was from the Dominion Coalition. A surrender offer. Generous terms. Full reparations. Restoration of all destroyed colonies. A formal apology. Prosecution of those responsible for ordering the attack. It was everything a rational species would want. It was fair, just, and reasonable. Admiral Heejin read it aloud for everyone to hear. Then she looked up at her assembled officers. "Recommendation?" The response came from a dozen voices at once. "Rejected." Heejin nodded and began typing a response. She spoke the words as she wrote them. "To the Dominion Coalition, you cannot pay for the dead. You cannot restore what you destroyed. You cannot apologize your way out of this. You wanted to teach us a lesson. You wanted to show us what happens to young species who don't know their place. Now we'll teach you something. We'll teach you what happens when you make humans march to battle." She sent the message and turned back to Thurin. "We launch in 6 hours, Ambassador. I suggest you get settled. It's going to be a long war." Thurin left the command center, his mind racing. He had studied thousands of conflicts, read countless military histories, analyzed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for this. The humans were going to lose. The mathematics guaranteed it. But they were going anyway. Not because they thought they could win, because they believed some things were worth any cost. As Thurin walked back to his quarters, he passed a group of young soldiers. They were gathered around a small display, watching images of the destroyed colonies. One of them, barely more than a child himself, was crying silently. Another put an arm around his shoulders. "They're going to pay," the second soldier whispered. "Every last one of them." For the first time in his long life, Thurin understood why the galaxy feared humans. They were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest. They were not the most advanced. But they possessed something his people had lost long ago, something most civilized species had evolved beyond. They possessed the ability to hate with perfect clarity, and they possessed the will to act on that hate regardless of cost. Thurin entered his quarters and began writing his first report. His hands shook slightly as he typed. He had come here to observe a conflict. He was beginning to realize he would be witnessing something far more terrible: the galaxy's introduction to human vengeance. The transport ship Indomitable was not built for comfort. Thurin learned this within the first hour of boarding. The corridors were narrow and utilitarian, all gray metal and harsh lighting. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and something else, something organic that his translator couldn't identify. Later he learned it was called sweat. He had been assigned quarters near the Marine section. The Valkyrie Council wanted him close to combat troops, to understand how human soldiers thought and prepared for battle. What he found challenged everything he knew about warfare. The common area was crowded when Thren arrived. Marines sat on benches and floors talking quietly or staring at nothing. Some were writing on actual paper, an ancient method his people had abandoned millennia ago. Others held small photographs, touching them gently as if they might break. Lieutenant Hana found him standing in the doorway. "Culture shock?" she asked. "I am observing pre-combat rituals," Thren replied. "My people meditate before battle. We clear our minds, focus on tactical objectives." "We focus too," Hana said. "Just on different things." She led him to a young Marine sitting alone in a corner. The soldier couldn't have been more than 20 standard years old. His uniform was crisp and new, but his eyes looked much older. "This is Corporal Jinho," Hana said. "Jinho, this is Ambassador Thren. He's here to document the war." Jinho looked up. "What do you want to know?" Thren sat down carefully. His body was not designed for human furniture. "Why are you writing letters? Is this a religious practice?" "Not religious," Jinho said. He held up the paper he'd been working on. "I'm writing to my little brother. He's 8. Was 8, he corrected himself quietly. He died on New Busan with my parents. With everyone. Then why write to him?" Jinho was quiet for a long moment. "Because I need him to know I didn't forget. I need him to know that what happened to him mattered. That I'm going to make it matter." He folded the letter carefully and put it in his jacket. "When this is over, if I survive, I'll put it on his grave. If I don't survive, someone else will. That's the rule. You take care of the letters for anyone who falls." Thren noted this in his datapad. "You acknowledge the possibility of death." "We acknowledge the certainty of death," Jinho corrected. "Some of us in battle. All of us eventually. The question isn't if we die, it's whether we die for something that matters." Over the next hours, Thren observed similar scenes throughout the ship. Soldiers sharing stories about lost family members. Others looking at photographs of places that no longer existed. Some just sitting in silence, lost in memories. Then the singing started. It began with one voice in a far corridor, then spread like fire through the ship. Dozens of voices, then hundreds, all joining in the same song. Thren's translator struggled with the lyrics, but the emotion needed no translation. Pain, loss, determination, anger shaped into purpose. "What is this?" Thren asked Hana. "War songs," she said. "Every human culture has them. Songs about battles, about sacrifice, about refusing to surrender. We sing them to remember who we are. They sound sad. They are sad. War is sad, Ambassador. Anyone who isn't sad about going to war doesn't understand what war means." The ship's intercom crackled. "All personnel, this is Commander Suman. We're 2 hours from the Varen system. Department heads to the briefing room." Thren followed Hana to the briefing. The room was packed with officers studying holographic displays of the target system. Commander Suman stood at the front, a tall woman with scars on her hands and face. Combat scars, Thren realized. This was not someone who commanded from safety. "Listen up," Suman said. "The Dominion knows we're coming. They've fortified every approach to Varen. Intelligence says they have 12 capital ships, 40 destroyers, and planetary defense networks. They're dug in and ready." She paused, looking around the room. "They're expecting us to be smart, to probe for weaknesses, to look for tactical advantages. They're expecting a careful, calculated attack." A smile crossed her face, not a happy smile. "So we're going to do the opposite. We're hitting them straight on, full force, no subtlety. We're going to punch through their defenses and make them understand that there's nowhere they can hide." One of the junior officers raised his hand. "Commander, the casualty projections for a direct assault are high," Suman finished. "I know everyone in this room knows. But here's what the Dominion doesn't understand. We're not fighting a war of calculations. We're not trying to minimize losses or maximize gains. We're fighting a war of messages. And the message is simple. You cannot do what you did and survive." Thren felt compelled to speak. "Commander, with respect, this strategy will result in massive losses. Perhaps if you approached from—" "Ambassador," Suman interrupted, not unkindly, "I appreciate your input. But you need to understand something. The Dominion killed our people thinking we'd calculate the cost of revenge and decide it was too high. They thought we'd be reasonable, rational, civilized." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. We're going to show them that humans have a different calculation. They killed our civilians, so we'll kill their military. They destroyed our homes, so we'll destroy their power. They wanted to teach us a lesson, so we'll teach them one. Never make humans march to battle. The briefing continued with tactical details, approach vectors, targeting priorities, evacuation procedures. Theren noted it all, but his mind kept returning to Suman's words. Different calculation. His people would never accept such losses for emotional reasons. They would negotiate, compromise, find another way. But humans weren't his people. After the briefing, Theren found Captain Doyen in the ship's small observation deck. The captain stood alone, watching the stars stream past. "Captain," Theren said carefully, "I must ask. The Dominion has offered full reparations. They've offered to prosecute those responsible. They've offered peace. Why not accept?" Doyen didn't turn. "You know what reparations are, Ambassador? They're money, resources, things. They're saying they can pay for what they took." He finally looked at Theren. "My sister isn't for sale. Those 42 children aren't for sale. You can't put a price on them and call it justice, boy. But more will die. More humans. More Dominion. Is revenge worth that cost?" "It's not revenge," Doyen said quietly. "It's deterrence. If we let this go, if we accept their apology and their money, what stops them from doing it again? What stops every other species from thinking they can kill humans and just pay for it later?" He turned back to the window. "We're teaching the galaxy a lesson. If you kill our innocent, we will come for you. Not tomorrow, not eventually, immediately. And we will keep coming until you can't hurt anyone ever again. Even if it destroys you, especially if it destroys us. Because then everyone will know, humans don't make threats. We make promises, and we keep them." The ship suddenly shuddered. Alarms began blaring. Theren grabbed a railing to steady himself. "That's the FTL drive powering down," Doyen said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "We're here." Over the intercom, Admiral Heejan's voice, "All hands, battle stations. We've arrived at Varen system. Dominion fleet is moving to intercept. Marines, prepare for drop. This is what we came for." The observation deck filled with soldiers moving to their positions. Theren watched them go, each one checking weapons and armor with practiced efficiency. These were not wild barbarians rushing blindly into battle. They were professionals, trained and disciplined. But they were professionals who had chosen to fight a battle they couldn't win for reasons that made no mathematical sense. Jinho passed by, saw Theren and stopped. "You should get to the secure area, Ambassador. It's going to get rough." "I am here to observe," Theren said. "I will observe," Jinho nodded. "Then observe this. We're not crazy. We're not suicidal. We know what we're doing and what it costs. But some things are more important than survival. Some things are worth dying for." He started to leave, then turned back. "You know what's in my pocket right now? That letter to my brother. If I die today, someone will make sure it reaches his grave, and someone else will write a letter to their family, and someone will carry that letter. We take care of each other, even in death." "Especially in death, why?" Theren asked. "Why is that so important?" Jinho smiled sadly. "Because it means we're not just fighting for the dead. We're fighting for each other. And that's something worth marching into hell for." The ship shook again as the first weapons fire hit the shields. Through the observation window, Theren could see the Dominion fleet. 12 massive capital ships, just as intelligence had reported. Dozens of smaller vessels. All of them moving to intercept the human fleet. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, facing certain losses, and they were singing again. The same war song from before, but louder now, fierce. Defiant. A sound that spoke of species that had survived ice ages and plagues, world wars and near extinctions. A sound that said, "We are still here and we will not be moved." Theren began recording. His report would say that the humans were irrational, that they fought without proper calculation of costs and benefits. But deep in his mind, in a place his civilization had long since evolved past, something else whispered. They fight like they have nothing to lose, because they already lost everything that mattered, and perhaps that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The battle began exactly the way Commander Suman had promised, with no subtlety at all. Theren watched from the observation deck as the human fleet emerged from FTL directly into the Dominion defensive formation. Any military strategist would call this suicide. You didn't charge straight into prepared defenses. You probed for weaknesses, you used tactics, you preserved your forces. The humans did none of these things. All ships, this is Admiral Heejin, full burn. Target their capital ships. Make them remember this day. The human vessels accelerated, their engines burning at maximum. Weapons fire lit up the void like a lightning storm. The Dominion fleet responded immediately, their superior firepower tearing into the advancing human ships. Theron watched a human destroyer take a direct hit. Its shields flared and died. Another shot ripped through its hull and atmosphere vented into space. The ship should have retreated, should have withdrawn to safety. Instead, it kept coming. That's the remembrance, Captain Doyen said beside him. Theron hadn't heard him approach. Captain Taehyun's ship. He lost his wife and 2 daughters on New Busan. The remembrance was dying. Theron could see the secondary explosions rippling through its hull, but it didn't slow down. It accelerated, pushing its damaged engines to full power, heading straight for a Dominion battlecruiser. He's going to... Theron started. Yes, Doyen said quietly. The remembrance struck the battlecruiser at full speed. The collision was silent in the void of space, but Theron imagined he could hear it anyway. Both ships exploded, a brief sun born and dying in the darkness. 3,000 Dominion crew, 800 humans. Waste, Theron whispered. Such waste. No, Doyen said. Sacrifice. There's a difference. The battle raged for 3 hours. Theron documented it all, his datapad filling with statistics and observations. The humans were taking terrible losses, just as predicted. 5 ships destroyed, 7 more badly damaged, thousands dead. But they weren't retreating. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The Dominion fleet had numbers and firepower, but the humans had something else. They had willingness. Every damaged ship that should have withdrawn instead pressed forward. Every tactical retreat the Dominion attempted turned into a rout, as human forces pursued without hesitation. Theron began to understand. The Dominion fleet was fighting to win. The human fleet was fighting to hurt their enemy, regardless of cost to themselves, and there was no defense against an enemy that didn't care about their own survival. Planetary assault teams, you're clear. Admiral Heijin's voice came over the intercom. Get down there and finish this. The Indomitable shuddered as drop pods launched. Theron felt his stomach twist. He had been assigned to accompany Lieutenant Hana's platoon for the ground assault. At the time, it had seemed like a safe assignment. Now he wasn't certain there was any such thing as safety around humans at war. The drop pod was cramped. 40 Marines packed into a metal cylinder, plus 1 very uncomfortable alien observer. Theron could smell their sweat and fear, and something else he was learning to recognize. Determination. Listen up, Hana said, her voice calm despite the vibrations as the pod entered atmosphere. Intelligence says the landing zone is hot. Dominion forces have fortified positions, automated defenses, the works. Expect heavy resistance. One of the Marines laughed. When don't we get heavy resistance? Fair point, Hana acknowledged. Standard procedure. Hit the ground, suppress defensive fire, advance on the command center. Stay tight, watch your sectors, and remember your training. She paused, then added softly, and remember why we're here. The pod hit ground hard. The doors blew open and the Marines poured out into hell. Theron stumbled after them, his recording equipment clutched to his chest. The landing zone was indeed hot. Weapons fire came from 3 directions. Explosions threw dirt and debris into the air. 2 Marines fell before they made it 10 steps from the pod, but the rest kept moving. Theron watched in horrified fascination as the humans advanced into fire that should have pinned them down. They used cover when they could find it, but when they couldn't, they just kept going. 1 Marine took a shot to the shoulder that would have killed Theron instantly. The human grunted, stumbled, and kept firing. Jinho, suppress that bunker, Hana shouted. Corporal Jinho ran forward, somehow staying low while moving at full speed. He threw something small that exploded with tremendous force. The bunker's guns went silent. Moving, another Marine yelled, and the platoon advanced another 50 meters. This continued for hours. Slow, bloody progress through prepared defenses. Thuren recorded it all, but he struggled to make sense of it. The humans were taking casualties that should have broken their formation. They should have retreated, regrouped, found another approach. Instead, they pressed forward. A Dominion soldier appeared suddenly, weapon raised. Thuren froze, certain he was about to die. Then Hana was there, moving faster than seemed possible. She fired twice and the Dominion soldier fell. "Stay close to me, Ambassador," she said, not even breathing hard. "You're no good to anyone dead." "Why are you protecting me?" Thuren asked. "I'm not one of your people." "You're someone who can't protect themselves," Hana replied. "That's enough." They reached the command center by nightfall. It was a massive structure built into the side of a mountain. Automated defense systems covered every approach. A Dominion officer's voice came over an open channel. "Human forces, this is Commander Veltok. I am authorized to offer local surrender. Cease your attack and we will discuss terms." Hana looked at her Marines. They were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. Any sane commander would accept the offer, at least temporarily. "No," Hana said simply. "Lieutenant," Veltok said, his translator making his voice sound almost human. "You have fought bravely. There is no shame in accepting honorable surrender. We can—" "You don't understand," Hana interrupted. "We didn't come here to accept surrender. We came here to remove threats." "What does that mean?" "It means you attacked our civilians. You killed our children. There is no surrender that makes that acceptable. There is no negotiation that brings them back. There is only ensuring you can never do it again." Silence on the channel. Then, "You're insane. All of you." "No," Hana said. "We're human. That's different." The assault on the command center took all night. Thuren watched from a relatively safe position as the humans systematically destroyed every defense, breached every wall, pushed deeper into the facility. They took casualties. 7 Marines died in the initial breach. 5 more in the corridors. But they kept coming. Jinho was hit during the final assault. Thuren saw it happen. The young corporal had been advancing across an open area when defensive fire caught him. 3 shots, center mass. He went down hard. Thuren expected him to stay down. Even humans couldn't survive that kind of damage. But Jinho got back up. He was wearing armor, Thuren realized. Good armor that had stopped the rounds. But the impact would have broken ribs, caused massive internal trauma. The pain must have been incredible. Jinho raised his weapon and kept firing. "Corporal, fall back," Hana shouted. "You need medical attention." "Not yet," Jinho called back. "Not until it's done." He threw another explosive, and the last defensive position fell silent. Marines poured through the gap. The command center fell within minutes after that. Commander Veltok was found in the central control room. He stood with his hands raised, surrounded by his staff. All of them looked terrified. Not of death, Thuren realized. Of something worse. "We surrender," Veltok said. "Formal, complete surrender, please just—" "Accepted," Hana said. Then she pointed to a communications console. "Open a channel to every Dominion position in this system. I want everyone to hear this." Veltok's hands shook as he activated the system. "Dominion forces," Hana's voice broadcast across the planet. "This is Lieutenant Hana of the Human Expeditionary Force. Your command center has fallen. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. Your reinforcements are not coming." She paused, letting that sink in. "You have 1 hour to surrender. All of you. Every base, every ship, every soldier. 1 hour. Anyone still fighting after that will be considered an active combatant and dealt with accordingly." "They won't surrender," Veltok said quietly. "They'll fight to the last." "Then there will be a lot of lasts," Hana replied. Exactly 1 hour later, Dominion forces across the system began broadcasting surrender signals. Not because they were defeated militarily, because they were defeated psychologically. The humans had shown them something that terrified them more than death. Absolute commitment. Thuren stood in the command center watching the surrender notifications come in. Jinho sat on the floor nearby, medics working on his injuries. He was writing again, Thurin saw. Another letter. Who are you writing to now? Thurin asked. Still my brother, Jinho said through gritted teeth as a medic set his ribs, telling him about the battle, about the people who fought beside me, about how we won. But he cannot read it. He is dead. I know, Jinho said. But I promised him I'd make it matter. I'm keeping that promise. Hana approached them, her uniform torn and bloody. Ambassador, I need your report to include something. What is that? We followed our rules of engagement. Every target was military. Every civilian area was avoided. We fought hard, but we fought clean. She looked at him intensely. I need the galaxy to understand that. We're not monsters. We're not mindless killers. 3 months. Thurin had been embedded with human forces for 3 months, and the war had become something different from what anyone expected. The Dominion coalition was fracturing. 2 member species had formally withdrawn their forces, citing the humans' unreasonable prosecution of conflict. 3 more were negotiating their own separate peace. The mathematical calculation was clear. Fighting humans cost more than any possible gain. But the humans weren't stopping. Thurin stood in another field hospital, on another conquered world, watching doctors work on another wave of wounded. The human medical technology was impressive, but there were limits. Some injuries went beyond healing. Sergeant Minho, you need to stop fighting, a doctor said, frustrated. You've lost partial hearing in both ears. The damage is permanent. You're eligible for medical discharge. Minho shook his head. He was older than most of the Marines, maybe 35 standard years. His face was scarred, his hands wrapped in bandages from burns he'd sustained 2 weeks earlier. I can still shoot. I can still lead my squad. You can't hear properly. I don't need to hear to do my job, Minho said quietly. I just need to be there for my people. The doctor looked to Thurin as if for help. The ambassador had no help to give. He'd seen this same scene play out dozens of times. Humans refusing medical evacuation, soldiers with injuries that should have ended their combat service demanding to return to their units. Why? Thurin had asked after the first time he witnessed it. Why not accept rest? Accept safety? The answer had been the same every time. Because my unit needs me. Casualties were approaching 40% of the original force. 40%. Any sane military would have withdrawn to regroup, to rebuild strength. But the human advance never slowed. Thurin had interviewed Admiral Hyojin about this a week earlier. The Admiral had looked tired, older than when he first met her. But her resolve hadn't wavered. Every species in the galaxy has a breaking point, she had said. A point where the cost becomes too high, where survival instinct overcomes purpose. They calculate when to stop fighting. She had paused, looking out at the stars. We don't have that. Not for this. They killed our children, Ambassador. They murdered our innocent. There is no calculation that makes that acceptable. There is no cost too high to prevent it from happening again. Now standing in the hospital, Thurin finally understood what she meant. These humans weren't fighting despite their losses. They were fighting because of them. Every fallen soldier made them more determined, not less. Ambassador Thurin? A young officer approached. Captain Doyen requests your presence. Something's happened. Thurin followed the officer through the temporary base. He noticed Marines gathering in small groups, their expressions dark. Something was wrong. He found Hana sitting alone outside the command tent. She was holding a piece of cloth, running it through her fingers repeatedly. It took Thurin a moment to recognize it. Captain Doyen's identification tag. He's dead, Hana said without looking up. Ambushed 3 hours ago. He was leading a reconnaissance patrol. Dominion forces were waiting. Thurin felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Grief. He had known Doyen for 3 months. The captain had been patient with him, had explained human thinking when Thurin struggled to understand. And now he was gone. I am sorry, Thurin said. Don't be sorry, Hana replied. Her voice was flat, empty. He knew what he was doing. We all know what we're doing. What will happen now? Hana finally looked at him. Her eyes were red but dry. Now we keep his promise. He said we'd march all the way to their throne. So that's what we'll do. Over the next week, Thurin watched something remarkable happen. The Marines recovered Doyen's body from the ambush site. They could have sent it back to Earth immediately. Instead, they carried him with them. Through 3 more battles, human soldiers took turns carrying their dead captain's sealed container. Thran asked why he led us this far, a Marine explained. He deserves to see the end. It was madness. It was inefficient. It made no tactical sense. It was also the most human thing Thran had ever witnessed. The battles continued, each one harder than the last. The Dominion, despite losing allies, fought with increasing desperation. They knew what was coming. The humans were pushing toward their core systems, toward their homeworld. This had never happened in recorded galactic history. Homeworlds were sacrosanct. You didn't threaten them because it left no room for peace. The humans didn't seem interested in peace. Thran was present when human forces liberated a POW camp. The Dominion had captured several hundred human soldiers in the early battles. When the Marines breached the camp, Thran saw the prisoners. They had been starved, beaten, tortured. Some couldn't walk. Others couldn't speak. All of them should have needed months of recovery. Instead, they asked to rejoin their units. These people need medical care, Thran protested to Commander Suman. They need rest and treatment. They need purpose, Suman replied. They need to know their suffering meant something. One of the rescued prisoners, a woman named Yuna, approached Thran later. She was thin, her body marked with evidence of torture, but she stood straight, her voice clear. Ambassador, I need you to include something in your report. What is that? They tried to break us. The Dominion. They thought if they hurt us enough, we'd give them information. Tell them about human weaknesses, human fears. She smiled grimly. We told them nothing. Because we have no weaknesses they can exploit. Our only weakness is caring too much, and that's also our strength. Thran watched her walk away to rejoin her unit. She could barely move, but she moved anyway. That night, Corporal Jinho found him. The young Marine looked older now, his face harder. He'd been in every major battle, had come close to death multiple times, but he was still writing his letters. Ambassador, Jinho said, I wanted to show you something. He pulled out his collection of letters. There were dozens now, all addressed to his dead brother. I've written about every battle, every person I've fought beside, every reason we keep going. When this is over, someone will deliver all of these to his grave. If you survive, Thran said. Even if I don't, that's the rule. Remember? We take care of each other's letters. Jinho was quiet for a moment, then said, You know what I realized? I'm not just fighting for my brother anymore. I'm fighting for everyone who can't fight. For the children who died on New Busan. For the soldiers who fell getting us this far. For the people back home who are counting on us to make sure this never happens again. He looked at Thran directly. That's why we don't stop. That's why we can't stop. Because if we do, all those deaths mean nothing. But if we finish this, if we make sure the Dominion can never threaten anyone again, then maybe their deaths meant something. The next day brought devastating news. Jinho's platoon was assigned to hold a defensive position, while civilians evacuated from a contested station. The Dominion threw everything at that position, determined to get through. Thran watched the battle feeds from the command center. He saw Jinho's position being overrun, saw the young Marine firing until his weapon ran dry, then using it as a club. Saw him fall, saw him get back up, saw him hold the line just long enough. The civilians escaped, all of them. 4,000 people who would have died. Jinho didn't survive to see it. When they recovered his body, they found his collection of letters in his jacket, every one of them intact. Lieutenant Hana took them carefully, reverently. I'll make sure they reach his brother's grave, she said. I'll deliver them myself when this is over. If this is ever over, Thran said quietly. Hana looked at him. It will be over. When we reach their homeworld, when we make sure they understand what they started. She walked away, leaving Thran alone with his thoughts. He had documented dozens of deaths now. Had watched humans sacrifice themselves for tactical advantages, for their comrades, for civilians they'd never met. His people would call this waste, inefficiency, emotional thinking that clouded rational judgment. But Thran was beginning to think his people were wrong. That evening, he filed another report. It was longer than the others, more detailed. He described the human willingness to sacrifice, their refusal to surrender despite losses, their strange custom of carrying letters for the dead. His conclusion read, The humans possess something that civilized species have lost or never had. They possess the ability to override survival instinct for abstract concepts like justice, revenge, and protection of others. They do not fight to win, they fight to ensure the threat is eliminated, regardless of personal cost. This makes them simultaneously the most noble and most terrifying species I have encountered. They are not stronger than us. They are not smarter, but they are willing to pay prices we would never accept, and that willingness makes them nearly impossible to defeat. He hesitated, then added one final line. I fear we have misunderstood what war means to humans. For most species, war is an extension of politics. For humans, war is existential. They do not fight to gain. They fight to protect, and they will fight until nothing remains on either side, rather than let the threat continue. Thurin sent the report and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human fleet was still advancing, still pushing toward the Dominion homeworld, still marching despite everything. And he knew with absolute certainty. 9 months. The war had lasted 9 months, and now the human fleet hung in orbit above the Dominion homeworld like a dark promise fulfilled. Thurin stood on the bridge of the flagship watching the planet below. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Billions of lives going about their existence, unaware that everything was about to change. Admiral Hyejin looked older. They all did. The human crew had been replaced 3 times over as casualties mounted. Hyejin was one of the originals, still here, still fighting. Her hair was completely white now. New scars marked her face, but her eyes held the same determination they'd had 9 months ago. Admiral, a communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's the Empress herself. Put it through. Galaxy-wide broadcast, the holographic display activated. The Dominion Empress appeared, her forearms spread in a gesture of supplication. She looked frightened. Good, Thurin thought, surprising himself. When had he started thinking like them? People of Earth, the Empress began, her translator making her voice sound almost human. I speak to you not as an enemy, but as one who recognizes the terrible mistake my people have made. We attacked your colonies in ignorance of what you truly are. We thought you were weak, insignificant. We were wrong. She paused, her multiple eyes glistening. I offer complete and total surrender. Not just of our military, but of our government. We will submit to any terms you require. Reparations, territory, trial of war criminals, anything, just please spare my people. The bridge was silent. Every human present had lost someone in this war. Every one of them had a reason to hate the Dominion with perfect clarity. Thurin waited to see what they would do. Lieutenant Hana, now promoted to captain after countless others had fallen, stepped forward. Admiral, permission to respond? Hyejin nodded. Hana's face was hard as stone. Empress, I am Captain Hana of the Human Expeditionary Force. 9 months ago, you attacked 3 of our colony worlds. You killed 2.3 million civilians. Men, women, children. You killed them because you wanted to teach us a lesson about knowing our place in the galaxy. Her voice grew colder. We learned that lesson. Now we're going to teach you one. You cannot do what you did and survive. You cannot murder our innocent and then offer surrender when we come for you. You attacked civilians, so we're coming for your military. You destroyed our homes, so we're going to destroy your power. You wanted to show us what happens to weak species. We're showing you what happens to species that make that mistake. The Empress's face showed pure terror. Please, we're offering everything. You can't offer enough, Hana interrupted. Because what you took can't be returned. But we'll accept your surrender. On our terms, your military will be dismantled. Your government will be restructured under galactic oversight. Every person responsible for ordering the colony attacks will stand trial. And your people will remember, for generations, what it cost to attack humanity. You're going to invade? The Empress's voice shook. You're going to occupy the homeworld? Yes, Admiral Hyejin said simply. Because that's the only way to ensure you never do this again. The transmission cut. Thurin felt his scales prickle. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no one had invaded a homeworld. It was unthinkable, barbaric, the kind of thing civilized species simply didn't do. Begin landing operations, Hyejin ordered. All forces proceed as planned. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Military targets only. Civilian casualties are unacceptable. We're not here for revenge. We're here to remove a threat. The invasion began within the hour. Thurin accompanied Commander Suman's forces as they landed in the capital city. The Dominion military had collapsed before a shot was fired. Soldiers abandoned their posts. Commanders surrendered their units. Entire battalions laid down their weapons. They're not even fighting, Thurin observed. They're terrified. Suman replied. We showed them what we're willing to do, what we're willing to suffer. They can't match that. No one can. The march through the capital was surreal. Dominion civilians lined the streets, watching in silent fear as human soldiers passed. The humans maintained perfect discipline. No looting, no violence against civilians, no unnecessary destruction. They were conquerors, but they were also professionals. They noticed something else. The human soldiers looked at the civilians with something other than hate. There was anger, yes, but also something that might have been pity. They're afraid of us, a Marine said quietly. Just like our people were afraid when the Dominion attacked. Are you going to hurt them? Thurin asked. The Marine looked at him like he'd suggested something obscene. No, they're not soldiers. They didn't attack our colonies. We have rules, Ambassador. We always have rules. They reached the Imperial Palace by evening. It was a massive structure, beautiful and ancient. The Empress waited inside with her court, all of them looking defeated and terrified. Captain Hana led the security team. Sergeant Minho was with her, still serving despite his injuries. They had carried Captain Doyen's container all this way, and now it rested in the transport outside. He had made it to the end, just as his soldiers promised. Your Majesty, Commander Suman said, her voice formal. In the name of the Human Federation, I accept your surrender. Your military will cease all operations immediately. Your government is now under transitional authority. You and your council will remain as advisors, but all major decisions will require human approval, until such time as we're satisfied you no longer pose a threat. The Empress looked at them with her multiple eyes. What are you? She whispered. What kind of species does this? It was Hana who answered. The kind that remembers. The kind that protects our own. The kind that keeps our promises. She stepped closer to the Empress. You asked why we won't stop, why we came all this way, why we won't just accept your apology and your money. I'll tell you. Because those 2.3 million people were ours. They were our responsibility to protect. We failed them once. We won't fail them again by letting the threat continue. But we've surrendered, the Empress said desperately. We're no longer a threat. Not to us, Suman agreed. But what about the next young species? What about the next civilization that you decide needs to learn their place? Would you have done to them what you did to us? The Empress said nothing. The answer was obvious. That's why we're here, Suman continued. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for everyone who comes after us. Every species that might face what we faced. We're teaching the galaxy a lesson. You cannot prey on the weak without consequences. Over the following weeks, Thren watched as humans implemented their occupation. It was strange, uncomfortable, but also surprisingly fair. War criminals were arrested and put on trial. Not executed immediately, but given proper legal proceedings. Military installations were dismantled, but civilian infrastructure was protected and even repaired where damaged. The humans built field hospitals for Dominion wounded. They distributed food to civilians. They maintained order without brutality. They were conquerors who somehow still followed their rules. Why? Thren asked Admiral Hyjin one evening. Why not just destroy them? Make them suffer as you suffered? Hyjin looked tired. Because that would make us like them. We didn't fight this war to become monsters. We fought to prevent monsters from hurting anyone else. She gestured to the planet below. Those civilians down there didn't attack our colonies. Their government did. Their military did. We're removing those threats, but we won't punish the innocent for the crimes of their leaders. That would violate everything we're fighting for. Thren thought about this for a long time. The humans had proven they could march all the way to an enemy's homeworld. They had proven they would accept any cost to achieve their goals. But they had also proven they would maintain their principles even in victory. Perhaps that was the most frightening thing of all. Before leaving to return to his people, Thren requested one final interview. He found Captain Hana at a memorial being constructed in the capital. It would honor both human and Dominion dead. The idea had been hers. Captain, I have one last question for my report. Ask, Hana said, not taking her eyes from the memorial design. Why does the galaxy fear humans? You're not the strongest species, not the most advanced, not the most numerous. So why should you inspire fear? Hana was quiet for a moment. We inspire fear because we remember. Because we don't forgive easily. Because when you hurt our innocent, we will come for you and we won't stop until you can never hurt anyone again. She finally looked at him. But more than that, we inspire fear because we do all of this while still being human. We maintain our morals. We follow our rules. We protect the innocent even when they're our enemies. We're not mindless killers. We're not savage barbarians. We're people who will march through hell for what's right and will do it while still being civilized. She gestured to the memorial. That's what makes us truly frightening. We have the capacity for terrible vengeance, but we choose to temper it with justice. We have the ability to destroy, but we choose to rebuild. We can hate, but we choose to be fair. That combination, that discipline paired with determination, that's what the galaxy should fear. Thurin returned to his ship that evening.